Hey guys, Taco here. I thought I'd make a video about my Nissan Titan. I bought it used probably about 4 months ago. Had some issues with the fan speed, and turns out that there was an issue with the fan clutch. And just going through the whole process of finding what exactly was wrong was pretty interesting. So I thought I'd make a video just to see if it could help someone else out, and yeah, just educate people a little bit about what it does and what can go wrong with it. So this here is the fan clutch, and it's they call it a thermal fan clutch. So what it does, it's kind of compensates for the heat that comes through your radiator, and there is a silicone based fluid that sits in here. So basically it acts like a torque converter. Fluid collects in the working area of this when it sits still, when it's not running. And so when you go to start it up, that fluid that is sitting there, it kind of acts in the torque converter. And that's why the fan upon startup is going super fast. It's basically kind of locked in there with the clutch. As the engine begins to come up to speed, then that fluid gets flung to the side, and then your clutch will disengage somewhat from the fan. Some manufacturers say that the minimum speed that these will run at is around 20 to 30% when they call it totally disengaged. Then as it heats up, you have this bimetal spring here, and it'll start to expand, and it'll actually start to turn that little valve in the center, and that releases more of that viscous fluid into the torque converter, and so it'll speed up the fan even more as the temperature goes up. So things that can go wrong with these is you can see there's a little seal in there. If that seal fails, your viscous fluid can leak out of there, and without that fluid, it loses its torque converting ability. And so you'll have a fan that isn't turning as the bimetal spring heats up. There's two ways to tell if that is what happened to your fan clutch. The first way, and the 100% way to tell, is if you have fluid that is actually leaking out. If you can get under there and see if there's some coming out. The second way is to give your fan blade, when the engine's off, of course, a little turn. If you have fluid in there, you should be able to tell there's going to be some resistance that almost feels kind of like a fluid resistance. If all that fluid is gone, you should be able to tell, because that fan is going to kind of spin freely. If your temperature gauge in your vehicle is going high, especially when the vehicle is sitting still, one of the first things that you should do is pop your hood and just check under and see if that fan is spinning. If it's not, shut it off and do the quick test that I just showed you. Another way that these fluid couplings or fan couplings can fail is when they actually lock up. So that fan blade is going to rotate at a 1-to-1 ratio with the drive pulley, which is in there. The problem with that is the fan isn't meant to turn at super high speeds that drive pulley can sometimes go at. So it's kind of hard on the plastic fans. Second thing is that you lose fuel economy when that fan is running all the time. If it's running at 100% when you're on the highway, that's just extra parasitic drag on your engine that doesn't have to be there. The other thing is just the plain noise. It's annoying, especially when you're accelerating and going at low speeds, and it also takes away from your acceleration because of that parasitic drag. So like I said before, when you first start up the vehicle, that fluid has to evacuate from the working area. It flings to the sides, and then that torque converter should actually sound like it's disengaging. So it starts to run at its low speed of 20% of the pulley. This varies a lot from one manufacturer to another, but if this goes on for a couple minutes or more, then something is probably wrong with that fan clutch. Another thing to keep in mind is that it takes a little longer for this clutch to disengage when the temperatures are low, just because the fluid is more viscous at lower temperatures. So at 2000 RPM, the blowing noise you're hearing is a telltale sign of a fan clutch that is not disengaging. This truck has been running for a few minutes, so the fluid has definitely had a chance to get out of the working area, and yet it still makes that same noise. I've done a few tests with the tachometer just to verify that it's not my ear and that it actually is spinning at the same rate as the pulley, and it is very close to a 1-to-1 ratio. And I've done a bunch of tests too, just driving around, making sure that, you know, it couldn't be something else. And long and short of it is, the clutch just does not disengage. So the one I have in there now is actually one that I got off Rock Auto to replace the one that I was initially having trouble with. And so it definitely was not problem solved. I had thought about going with the original Nissan one, but the cost difference was $100 for the aftermarket one versus about $350. These are Canadian dollars for the Nissan one. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try and see. And yeah, it didn't work out. There's actually another really good video on YouTube. Some fellow showing you how to change out the clutch, and he had mentioned that he had had issues with aftermarket Nissan fan clutches. So yeah, I guess there's a reason. Okay guys, so the tools we're going to need to change out this fan and fan clutch are a 10mm wrench. Ratcheting wrench is super awesome if you have one. An 8mm. You need a ratchet with a 19mm, or a wrench if you don't have a ratchet. And then if you got a little impactor, a driver with a 10mm socket, that would be awesome to take the clutch off the fan. And then you need a flat-headed screwdriver, and that's just for these screws here to take off our air intake. So the first thing we want to do is just take off this sensor, and then go ahead and loosen this screw and this screw on the air intake. After that, we'll go ahead and take these two 8mm bolts off the shroud. There's one on this far end too. Once those are off, we can go ahead and start on the 4 fan clutch studs. So there's 4 nuts on there that go onto studs, and that takes the 8mm wrench. Once you get those all off, you just kind of pop this shroud ahead when it's loose, and you can kind of just work the whole fan out with the clutch on it. Okay, so I've gotten this hose off, got these 2 screws out of the shroud. Once you get a couple of these nuts off of the clutch, it's going to be kind of tricky to get the bottom 2 out. So there's a couple ways. You can take the skid plate off the bottom, try come out through that way. I elected to get a 19mm socket and just give a turn on this pulley here to turn the belt. The other way would be to take the belt right off and just let it freewheel, I guess, and just turn it that way. So yeah, I'll leave that up to you. So once you got all the nuts off, just push this shroud ahead here and work that fan out. It takes a little working to get it out. You might have to kind of turn it as you go. So we'll Okay, so now we got the fan out along with the clutch. We're just going to go ahead and take these 4 bolts out. I use the 10mm socket. And then we just go ahead and throw it on the Nissan one here. And we'll just go ahead and get those tightened up. And yeah, it's just a reverse procedure. Put it back in, do everything up, and when you put the nuts on the studs for the fan clutch to the pulley, make sure that those little studs didn't come loose at all. Sometimes when you go on those nuts, it'll cause the stud to come out, and you want to... Okay, so we got everything back in. When you do those little nuts on the clutch, you might want to do one side and then do the other side a bit more, do the other side, just like you would a tire, because it actually fits on a spigot there, so it's pretty easy to kind of get it cocked. So yeah, just go around it a couple times, make sure those are nice and snug. We got our hose clamps done up on our air intake. We got our sensor plugged in, and we got our shroud button back up here. So yeah, just do a once over, make sure you didn't leave anything behind, and we'll go ahead and fire up. Okay, so I have the Nissan fan clutch in there now, and I've just started the truck. It's been running for about 15 seconds here, and I have it at 2000 just to speed up the disengagement. So we'll see how we do. And there you can hear right there it disengages. So that took about oh shoot, I'd say about 40 seconds for it to disengage. So yeah, that sounds a lot better, and should get a little better fuel economy now too. So hopefully you guys enjoy the video, and yeah, like and comment, and we'll see you later. Bye.